Mexico in just a moment and that historic victory for the left in the presidential elections.
Also, a spy in the sky to help Australia's Great Barrier Reef, how the World Cup has already been won by Vladimir Putin, and Matthew Kenyon is waiting in the green piece of Wimbledon as the 2-week tennis fest gets underway. All that coming up here on Newsday.
Fighting corruption and working for the poor. That's what Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, or AMLO for short, has been campaigning for. The former Mexico City mayor has now won his country's presidential election. He's been campaigning on a left-wing platform for radical change. His main challengers have admitted defeat, including the candidate from the long-ruling PRI. Will Grant is the BBC's correspondent in Mexico. I spoke to him a little earlier.
He began by saying a line that I've heard him say throughout the campaign, that he wants to be remembered as a good president, which is, quite a simple idea, you might think. But with Mexico's history of not good presidents, I can see why he wanted to set that out sort of front and center. And then he went on to sort of repeat the basic plank of his entire election offer to the Mexican people, and that is to target corruption. He said, it doesn't matter if you're family, if you're a friend, if you're an associate of a high functionary, if you're a top of government, you will go to prison if you are guilty of crimes.
He was the leftist candidate, now president. In the lead up to this, all the polls were saying that if he was to win, as predicted, he was going to redefine Mexico's politics. How so?
This is a country that has suffered a lot of deep and ingrained problems. We've mentioned the corruption, but also, of course, the drug violence, the power of the cartels in several states around the country, and their close relationship with the institutions of the state, whether or not that is police, local mayors, governors. There's a long and very shameful history in that area. So he wants to focus on trying to unpick that. But also, I think he wants to make a difference to people in their pockets, in their family budgets. The levels of inequality in Mexico are staggering. Just 1-2% of people own the vast majority of the wealth, while over 50% are in poverty. That needs addressing.
You're absolutely right. The economy is a huge thing, and one of the things that when I was there, people talked about, of course, corruption and violence were at first on the list, but economy and alleviating poverty was one thing, except, of course, his approach to the economy has been picked up by his opponents as something that they held against him. Do you think that he'll be able to deliver on that promise and then turn things around for Mexico?
A lot of the stuff that's said about Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador is hard to stand up because of the sheer amount of sort of dirty tricks and mudslinging that goes on in this country. For example, he often got linked to Hugo Chavez, the late Venezuelan leader, that somehow he would be taking Mexico to a sort of state-run socialist model a la Cuba or Venezuela. That's not very likely to happen, mainly because the entrenched economic interests just wouldn't allow it to happen, the banks, the oil industry, so on. Nevertheless, I do think he does want to completely rethink the way that Mexico has been running, not just for the past 6 years under Enrique Peña Nieto, but the last several decades. That will involve lots of measures that might seem outwardly just simply populist measures, not living in the lavish residence of Los Pinos, selling them the plane that belongs to the presidency. There's a whole series, cutting his own wages in half, taking away the lavish pensions of outgoing presidents.
Now it's third time charm for him, because he's been campaigning since 2006. He tried twice and failed, and he succeeded this time in becoming president. What do you think swayed things in his favor this time around?
One word really is exhaustion. I think people are exhausted with the status quo. They're tired of Enrique Peña Nieto as a president. They're tired of his entire administration. They're tired clearly with the pre-party, the centre-right party that has enjoyed power for 71 interrupted years up until the year 2000. And really the sense that Mexico is simply made up of two political choices, and both of them are pretty conservative.
The BBC's Will Grant in Mexico City.
11 minutes past the hour. 1 million people a year die of it. 80 million carry it in Africa. 250 million around the world. Many without knowing it. It's hepatitis B, one of the most common and deadly viruses in the world, affecting the liver and often being passed from mother to newborn child. But now a new, much cheaper and simpler test for hepatitis B has been devised, and one of the authors of the research from the Pasteur Institute is Dr. Yusuke Shimakawa, who joins us now. First off, Doctor, welcome to the programme. Congratulations. Listen, how different is this test from others? There is a test which exists. It's quite expensive. How have you managed to cut the price so totally?
Yeah, so thank you very much for this radio. So first, the conventional test to examine treatment eligibility in hepatitis-infected people, such as liver biopsy or hepatitis B DNA test, were very expensive and not accessible in most of people living in Africa, where the disease is highly endemic. And in contrast, the new score called TREAT-B consists of two inexpensive markers that are widely already available even in Africa. Therefore, the simple and inexpensive score may help scaling up clinical management of hepatitis B in Africa or in other resource-limited settings.
Right. How easy is it to use? Having tested for it, how practical is it, particularly in less wealthy countries?
Yeah, so the score consists of two markers, one called alanine transaminase, which is a basic routine laboratory markers, which should be performed at the even peripheral laboratories. And
so what do you, when you say a marker?